Before we jump in, this program contains material that may be unsuitable for some listeners. The content includes descriptions of violence, discussions about sex, and mental illness. We strongly recommend that listeners who are sensitive to these topics or are under 18 years of age refrain from listening. By continuing to listen, you acknowledge and accept this. All right, let's get started. It's May 24th, 2014, a sunny morning. In a black BMW sits a young guy, 22 years old. His name, Elliot Rodger.
Hi, Elliot Rodger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you.
This scene where Elliot's in his BMW, he's looking at the camera. Elliot's describing all of his perceived wrongs, over his entire life, why he's in the position that he's in. He feels that he's forced to take some sort of drastic action. He's been treated as an insignificant person through his entire life.
This is not his first YouTube video, but this particular video will be his last.
You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one, the true alpha male.
Again, he's describing everything that happened to him over his life and how he's forced to take some sort of serious act to teach everybody a lesson about what they've done to him throughout his life.
Yes.
The video is about 6 minutes long. The morning sun hits Elliot's face. He squints, sometimes lowers his glasses. Outside the car, tall palm trees are visible, and joggers run by.
After I've annihilated every single girl in the sorority house, I'll take to the streets of Isla Vista and slay every single person I see there.
Everyone is waking up in the small student and harbor town of Isla Vista in California. And on this particular morning, no one has any idea what is about to happen.
That this is his last video to them before he acts in a way that he's forced to do because of how he's been treated by humanity, particular women. There's a day of retribution.
You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it. It's an injustice, a crime, because I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy. And yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men instead of me, the supreme gentleman.
Elliot turns off the camera on his phone, stops filming, and heads towards his apartment.
All of a sudden we hear like 5 really loud gunshots.
What we do know is one fatality so far, and that is on Adele Playa Street. We're not sure if that person suffered from gunshot wounds or from something else.
So I turned around and I started like walking really fast the other way, and I heard a gunshot. So I was like, I had no idea that it was a pistol at all.
You are listening to The Incel Killer, a story in 5 parts about how a young man could develop such a hatred towards people in general and women in particular that he decides to kill them all. My name is Jonathan Rollins, and I'll be narrating this series.
This is the American horror story, or the world's horror story, is when you have somebody who on the outside is one thing and on the inside is something completely different, and you don't see it.
And if you like this series, don't forget to follow us so you'll know as soon as we release a new episode. But now let's begin. This is Chapter 1, A Blissful Beginning. To understand how the main character of this story, Elliot Rodger, became who he became, we need to take this story from the beginning. Elliot Oliver Robertson Rodger was born in London, England on July 24, 1991. Elliot is the first child of his father Peter and mother Chin, and he is born into a family that comes from success. His father is an award-winning photographer and director, and Elliot's mother, Chin, knows many people in the film industry, including Star Wars director George Lucas, and it is rumored that she even dated Steven Spielberg. After Elliot's born, the family moves to a large house in the countryside, and Elliot eventually starts preschool. He's nervous, his life changes, and he cries uncontrollably on the first day. But there are happy moments in the new hometown, and Elliot is often with his father on a series of hills near their house, flying kites.
He was adorable. He would laugh so much that sometimes we were worried he would choke.
This is Elliot's father, Peter, in an interview on ABC.
It was really wondrous, those first 4-5 years of his life. It was wondrous.
You loved Elliot.
I loved Elliot.
Elliot loved you.
But Father Peter has higher ambitions than directing jobs in England. He wants to direct films in the U.S., and around the same time that Elliot's sister is born, the family begins planning to move to the U.S. Elliot is now 5, and the thought of moving to the U.S. scares him, but his parents entice him with the fact that the house they are moving to will have a pool. And that helps a little bit, so after a while, the family moves to the neighborhood of Woodland Hills in Los Angeles, California, which is a rather exclusive area. And up until now, until the age of 5, Elliot will later say that he is still happy. His first real friend in the U.S. is a girl named Maddie, and Elliot will later describe her as the first female friend I ever had, and also the last. Later in life, he will miss this time.
I can hear some kids playing down there. When I hear those sounds, it reminds me of the days of my childhood. Those were the best times of my life. I wish I could be a kid again.
This is before he began to believe that the majority of people are his enemies, before the hatred started, before he thought that everyone is horrible.
When you hit puberty, your life either becomes heaven on earth or a living hell. It all depends on how many girls like you. No girls liked me. And I hate them all for it.
When he was 5, his father, he was in theory a happy child when he was growing up.
This is Brian Whitney, who wrote the book The Supreme Gentleman Killer, which is about Elliot Rodger, and Brian will be our guide throughout this story.
Elliot was pretty much terrified as a very nervous, awkward 5-year-old to go to America, and was very concerned. Elliot remembers his childhood as being very, very happy before the move.
It's now 1997, and Elliot is 6 years old and has now started the first grade. Lots of new students. He doesn't know anyone, but things go quite well at first. After a while, something happens that shakes the family. Elliot notices that his parents are arguing more and more.
So when they moved to America, his parents started to not get along. He heard them fight, and so on and so forth.
The arguments continue, and one day, Elliot asks his mother if they're going to divorce. She says no, but a few days later, that's exactly what happens.
They ended up getting divorced. His father moved into a more opulent home. His mom moved into a home that he considered, rather, dingy and not very impressive. So he, like almost any kid that would go through something, any kid when the family gets divorced, goes through a lot of pain and suffering. And Elliot did that as well. It's definitely a tough time for him in his life. at that point.
Elliot is now 7 years old, and his parents have separated. He mostly lives with his mother, although he stays with his father on weekends. Elliot feels sad about these changes in his life, and he spends a lot of time in nature to explore and go on adventures. He becomes kind of a refuge.
You know, he was definitely unhappy about the divorce and his parents not being together anymore.
One day, just a few months after he turned 7, Elliot comes home to his father's place after school. He's surprised, taken aback. In the kitchen stands a woman named Sumaya.
They hadn't been divorced very long, so Elliot came home one day and his dad's there with this very beautiful, exotic-looking woman. Elliot kind of assumed that they were his friends. He didn't imagine that his father would already be seeing someone else, because his mother certainly wasn't.
But as time goes on, it becomes clear that Sumaya and Elliot's father are a couple.
Even at this early age, though, Elliot started to have some respect for his father, that he was able to kind of hook up with this really attractive woman so soon after he'd been divorced from his mom. It was the kind of thing that was already at the forefront of his mind. Even though he was really upset that his father was seeing someone, he was also really impressed that his father was seeing somebody hot.
Despite the big change, 7-year-old Elliot becomes more and more accustomed to the situation. He thinks Sumaya is quite fun, and she plays and jokes with him. But soon, she also starts to give orders, express opinions, and does so in a harsher way than he's used to.
Just sort of pushing back when he acts up and so on and so forth. This enrages him. He's like, she's not his real mom. She doesn't have the right to do that. So initially in Sumaya, he was like, wow, she's really attractive, and he liked her. But before long, he was becoming irritated with the way she was treating him.
Elliot's life continues. He gets to attend movie premieres, and his father's career continues to skyrocket. And he and Sumaya now move to a big house. But despite his father's success and Elliot's desire for wealth, he prefers to be with his mother.
At this point, there wasn't really anything that was, it's kind of typical. My dad's dating someone new and he just got divorced and I'm unhappy about it. I don't think at this point there was really anything that broad with her. That does happen later, though, for sure.
Elliot may not be overly fond of his mother or the idea that his father has met a new girl. He doesn't hate it, at least not yet. But he still doesn't feel well. He struggles in school, has difficulties with other students, is often alone and feels left out. It's around this time that his parents begin to worry about his mental health. His mother describes in a divorce document that Elliot has special needs. He is a high-functioning autistic child. His father, however, does not agree with this diagnosis and states in the same court document that he is not aware of any diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, although he believes there was something special about Elliot.
There's a lot of signs, of what's going on with him later, but he hated crowds. He'd get really, really uptight in crowds and would just start to cry. So if somebody asked him a question, hey, do you want to go to the fair today? He would write yes, I'd like to go to the fair, as opposed to saying it out loud. He would make repetitive noises. He would tap his feet a lot. Teachers said he was unresponsive.
Elliot's principal at the school describes him in an interview from the documentary The Virgin Killer.
He didn't make eye contact with anyone. When we think about what we each give each other as social cues to let us know whether or not we want someone to reach out to us or approach us, there's usually social cues, body language, eye contact that indicates to another person that I see you, I would like for you to say hello, or I want to say hello to you.
Principal Deb Smith says that he is very shy, very withdrawn.
Wouldn't have even been able to tell you what his voice sounded like at that time. There was absolutely not one word that he ever expressed.
Elliot almost whispers when he talks, and during recess at school, he hides and waits for class to start again. He is a perfectionist and shows signs of being compulsive at this time. The school desk is in perfect order. Here's Elliot's father talking about it.
When we realized he had social issues, we brought therapists in to try and help him integrate into society.
Did he have trouble with other children, with making friends? He did.
He had very few friends in elementary school because he was a very, 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 very shy boy. And we just felt that that was his issue. He was never formally diagnosed. And there was a suggestion that he might have been high-functioning Asperger's.
He has difficulty with social interactions, and he struggles to participate in any kind of activities with other children, whether playing or just hanging out, but he never receives an official diagnosis.
His mother did think he had Asperger's, but his father thought he did not, and it was basically just a kid that was going through some stuff that he would grow out of. But there's no doubt he's an odd kid, you know?
There was a certain OCD about him. There was a certain, like he'd always put his plate in the same place. He'd like to wear the same clothes every day. Elliot really was a very high-functioning human being. If he was sitting here right now, you would think what a polite boy he was, but yet he had this thing going on inside of him.
Yes, something's going on inside. An gnawing feeling of not being enough begins to grow within him at this time. He's worried that he's so short, the shortest in the class. He really only has one friend, James, who's in the same class, but often, when other friends are around, Elliot just sits in a corner and cries. He's jealous that James is also playing with other kids. This is a feeling that will only increase over the years. And this only friendship that he has with James is quite shaky. He withdraws more and more, thinking that if I only become cool, everything will change. Then everyone will like me.
So this is like something that goes on throughout his entire life. This is sort of the beginning of it, but it goes on through his entire life. Like Elliot never was able to, just kind of try to be himself and see if people would like him for himself.
It's 2001, and Elliot is 10 years old. Now that he wants to be cool, he notices that he doesn't have the right clothes or the right hairstyle. So he's angry at his parents for not buying them or letting him go to the right hairdresser.
So he bleached his hair blonde, to go to school, and he's like, now I'll be cool. Got really into skateboarding. He wanted to show people how cool he was, get attention. And like a lot of kids, again, like this is still stuff that's not that uncommon. Like a lot of insecure kids of his age are going to be like, oh, no one's noticing me. If only I was good at skateboarding. If only I was blonde.
No, Elliot's behavior is still not that different. But still, there's much that bothers him. At school, there are the cool kids, those who know how to act, how to dress, and then there's the rest. Elliot decides here that he does not want to be one of those who are ignored and forgotten. He thinks that if only he were good at skateboarding, or if only he were blonde, or if only he had this type of hairstyle and these clothes, then things would change.
So some kids liked his hair, and he ended up getting some friends through that. At least he thought he does, convinced himself he was cool. He was really into Pokemon, for example, and he just stopped playing completely because that wasn't cool anymore. So even the things that he liked, that he enjoyed, that he got, filled his heart, he was like, I'm not doing that because other kids don't like that.
Elliot gives himself a mission. He's fixated on the idea of what others think, feel, or believe about him. The mission is to increase his social status.
So he's already completely fixated on his social stature. He's saying he's insignificant. He's weak, he's nothing. That's how he feels like everyone's treating him. But in reality, I'm sure that wasn't the case.
But the exclusion and loneliness he experiences just continue for him. Around this time, when Elliot's about 12 to 13 years old, he describes himself as a little mouse.
He considers himself to be insignificant, that weaker than everybody else, that he has to scurry and hide from these more powerful creatures.
Elliot is mostly at his mother's house, despite being ashamed of how she lives and that she's not particularly rich. It doesn't fit into his mindset that he can be cool and have a mother who lives in a small house. And this, how she lives, is something he doesn't want others to know.
So we met this kid. Kid's name is Connor.
Connor is popular, and Elliot invites him to his mother's home. They have fun, they hang out, and Elliot thinks everything went well.
But then, supposedly, Connor went back to school and told everyone Elliot was poor. And then he got really incredibly upset about that, to the point he was taking photos of his father's house, like bringing them in, trying to impress the other kids. And obviously, that's kind of the whole vibe with Elliot the whole time. Like, he could have gone back and just, they could have said he was poor, and who cares, right? But instead, he goes running around, showing everybody photographs of his father's house to try to impress all the other kids with how much money he actually has.
And this pattern will continue throughout his life. Elliot's longing to be accepted, or longing for everyone to think he's cool. During these years, middle school, when Elliot is striving for attention at school, he's bleached his hair, tried to buy new clothes, even invited a friend over, another world is opening up at the same time. The world of the internet. But this is a different time than now. A time when the internet isn't in everyone's pockets. To get online, Elliot needs to go to something called an internet cafe, and he spends a lot of time online.
So let's say you need to get on the internet, but you don't have the hardware required to get online. What's the solution? Try a cyber cafe.
He found an internet cafe near his house that he would go to, and he'd go and hang out there for hours on end. Even had a couple de facto friends that he hung out with every once in a while that he just played video games with.
Elliot spends 6, 7, 8 hours straight playing a single game, World of Warcraft.
Yeah, so World of Warcraft is a very, very intricate game. Other characters are other people. And this, at that point, was kind of unreal, especially to somebody like Elliot. So he's not just playing a video game, and he's a character in the video game.
He is this character. It becomes part of him. Through this character, he can now communicate with people all around the world.
It's a magical world. It's a different land, all sorts of different rules. And there's also guilds.
And Elliot plays, as we've mentioned, a lot. And in this, he feels a bit happy. He's doing something that actually makes him feel good.
It's not just a vibe where he's oh, I like this game. It's it's an entirely different social world, an online world that he can escape to. He had these buddies that he went down there with, that all, when you're playing video games like that, they're not hanging out together, but they would walk down together, and for him, he actually had a social life, such as it was,
Yes, here, Elliot actually has a social life, or at least kind of, for a short period. But now, something changes.
I see so many hot, beautiful blonde girls walking with absolute stupid, obnoxious-looking douchebags.
This is from a recording that Elliot made later about his time as a teenager. And the teenage years are a difficult time in his life, and he feels that puberty is really tough.
He started to really fear puberty and the point where other kids would actually start having sex, because it would just remind him of what a loser he was, like how no one wanted him, how nobody liked him, how these girls wouldn't like him.
What happens now is that he begins to develop hatred towards guys that girls like. He himself is too shy to even talk to girls. They make him feel nervous, inferior. But he so desperately wants to be with them, but he has no idea what to say to them. So instead, he begins to hate the popular boys. But despite this hatred, he still desperately wants them to like him. He wants friends. He wants girls to like him. He wants to be someone. But none of this happens. Rather, the opposite happens.
This was kind of the origin of the Supreme Gentleman stage, where he started being I'm good looking, I'm smart, I dress well, my hair is good. Why don't they like me? They like this idiot, over there. So
Elliot believes that he deserves to have a girlfriend. Why not, he thinks. He's both smart and good looking. But it doesn't work for him, so he gets angrier and angrier. He goes from being afraid of the popular people to being angry to feeling hatred towards them.
Like I'm sure at the base of it he was still afraid. But the fight or flight thing was starting to become more fight than flight, like at this point.
And as mentioned, he's afraid of puberty because the closer it gets, the more relationships with girls will matter.
Did you talk to Elliot about sex?
Yeah.
Here's Peter, Elliot's father again.
What did you say?
How it's so important to present yourself as a human being from the heart outwards and not to be weird. And I say weird because it is weird when you think girls are going to throw themselves at you.
At 10, 11 years old, he's already dreading like turning 13 because in his mind, like that's when it's really going to get bad. He started thinking about sex and his lack of at an age where hardly anyone was even having sex, if you know what I'm saying. Became an obsession.
Hey, Elliot Rodger here. Oh, check it out. There's me. In all my fabulousness. Oh yeah. I desire girls. I'm sexually attracted to girls. But girls are not sexually attracted to me. There's a major problem with that. A major problem. That's a problem that I intend to rectify.
In the next episode,
he wasn't getting any of the positive feedback that he wanted, so he just decided to act weird instead, that it just acts strange.
Elliot is trying out new strategies to connect with others.
Something happened to him, and then I think he became very mentally ill. What I don't get is we didn't see this coming at all. None of us.
You've just heard the first chapter of The Incel Killer, a podcast series in 5 chapters. My name is Jonathan Rollins. The series is made by Jens Nielsen and Thomas Reinai. The executive producer is Tove Freeman-Leffler. And don't forget to follow the podcast so you can keep track of when new episodes are released. This is a production of PodLit.